7th. Here in Israel and Jews around the world have been living in crisis and living with the trauma every single day. And I say this on a personal level and also from what I see around me is that the shock and the devastation left many of us paralyzed. You know, a lot of us became stuck and we like, didn't know what to do. And I look around and I see that other people were able to create something and act and do something constructive. And what has been so inspiring to me is seeing what Hadassa has managed to do with all of this, grief and these really tremendously difficult feelings. She is a mom of 7 children, and she basically shifted their focus from brutality and the terrible news that was coming out, and she shifted their focus to strength and inspiration and telling them stories of heroes. And she'll talk about that more. And so she started collecting these stories from other people. And what happens is that she kind of became a national celebrity here, not only for, focusing on her own kids, but the stories started to gain a lot of popularity on social media. And she's been helping all of us put a vocabulary, give words to address the war to kids in an age appropriate manner. And these are stories that are both civilians and also military. They're, people who stepped up in all different ways. And I could tell you that, I'm born and bred in New York, and growing up as a Jewish kid, I grew up on stories of heroes, Jewish heroes that lived a very long time ago, and the stories of the Maccabees and the stories in the Bible. And what I think is so powerful here is that you start reading the stories in her book, and first of all, you realize that these are not folklore. These aren't stories from an ancient world of Queen Esther and Mordecai. These are real life stories that happened in our time, from regular people. And not only that, but what I get from her book, The Heroes of October 7th, is that I think a lot of readers will read the stories and ask themselves, what would I do for my community if my community was in crisis? And so because she, focuses on these stories of just regular, regular ordinary people, it turns it into something more universal that we could all relate to. And it really shifts our mindset as Jewish parents who are talking to Jewish children. And she's going to talk more about that. I think the stories help us kind of focus on the good in people, the inherent good in people, and that even amongst all this insane brutality that happens, uh, there are good people who have been doing amazing things. So, and she's going to speak more about that today. And Hanna Cohen is here with us. She's one of the strongest people that I've ever met. Her husband sacrificed his life for the nation, and she is moving forward and using the community around her to gain support. So I hope that you all enjoy their presentation, and I hope I encourage all of you to get a copy of the book. It's available in bookstores. It's on Amazon, and do yourselves a favor and give it as a gift to all the Jewish children in your lives. So back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yehudit, for that beautiful introduction. I am going to, again, do some tech support. So I'm going to get Hadassa pinned here. I'm going to have myself pinned, and we'll have you pinned as well. And so just give me one moment, just so when people see the recording, they see our beautiful faces. Okay, terrific. Okay, so I will start the program by asking Hadassa some questions. So thank you, everyone, for being here and putting some of your questions already in the chat and sharing them with me. I'm just going to show the book cover. It's a beautiful book cover. And start with some questions, Hadassa, for you. So,
Just a
Yehudi,
minute, Michael, can
yeah,
I
sure,
say something? I'm
please.
really flattered, but I just want to say that I'm not here to talk about how amazing am I. I'm here to say how when the going gets rough, I just want to take care of myself, to think about myself because I'm a mother of 7 children, and sometimes I just want to shut the door, go to sleep, maybe eat something in silence. And writing these stories was a way to remind me that there are people that walk among us that knew they had a lot to lose and still protected our country. And writing these stories was a way to remind myself that I want to be a good person, that I can be if I will take the inspiration from them. So you can start now.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And Yehudi shared a little bit about how it started. Can you give us a little bit more background on when exactly you started putting this project together and what that was like?
Yes, maybe I started when we were in Jerusalem during the holiday. So I woke up in the morning at 7, early in the morning with a tiny baby of 2 months. And just as I went to the living room and blessed my children, Shabbat Shalom, happy holiday, we heard a siren. And I really tried to smile as my blood pressure rose. And I told them, okay, let's find a shelter. And you need to walk carefully and slowly because an injury from running is more common than from a rocket. I don't know if they believed me, but we got in and out the state from countless time until 12 at noon, and we couldn't use our phones because we are religious. But some students came to the shelter and they told us that there are 35 hostages and serious battles in the south of the country. So we try to talk really quietly, but children know they have their own ways to read our thoughts and to see the expressions on our faces and to feel our heart. So what did I know on October 7th in the morning? I didn't want to ask myself. But in the evening, we came back to our home in Pardes Chana, a place far of noises of war and fear of sirens. And I felt like my children was recovering and back to their routine. So the next morning, they didn't have schools because of the war. So they asked me, Mom, can we see a movie? Can we play on PlayStation? And I scream at them, what are you talking about? There is a war going on. Our friends are still hiding in the safe rooms. Children your ages are still hiding in the safe rooms. But they couldn't understand because you must understand that at the same time, experts on online and TV told us, the parents and teachers, don't expose your children to the harsh reality. Take their phones, shut down the television, don't let them go into TikTok and Instagram. So I ask myself, so what then? If I won't tell them something about what is going on out there, they will fill in the gaps themselves from their own imaginations or from incomplete bits of information, or the opposite, they will completely cut off from what is happening. And when you live in Israel, the history is being written day by day. And I felt like our brothers and sisters are in the middle of this war and we must do something. So my way of involving my children was writing letters and baking cakes for soldiers and civilians who has been evacuated from their homes. And I told them, so let's write or let's pray. And I didn't saw the spark in their eyes. They were just trying to please me. So one evening, a week after the war broke out, I asked them, do you want to hear a story from this war? And they told me, okay, my older children, 7 and over. And I've started to tell them one story about Rachel Edri, Rachel and the cookies from Ofakim. And I felt like when I finished to tell them the story, I saw their eyes guys got bigger and bigger and they smiled and they got emotional. And it's kind of embarrassing, but I will tell you that in our home, when you tell a good story, the children is acting like they are telling the story. Their all expressions like So when they did it, I knew that this was a damn good story. So I told them, okay, from now on, I will tell you one heroic story a day, and I will also write a book on the fly because that's who am I. I like to think big, to do big. So that's how we started.
Beautiful. Now that leads me to a few questions, but I'm not sure if everyone knows the story. Is it Rachel? Is that correct? Rachel's cookies, it's listed in your book. Can you share a little bit about that story for those who don't know it? Because it's
Yes.
pretty remarkable.
Yes, of course. Rachel Edry is an absolutely normal, everyday woman from the periphery. She's not a soldier. She's definitely not young. And on October 7th, early in the morning, she went with her husband David out from their house into the shelter. During this time, 5 terrorists got into their home. And when they came back, the terrorists took them as hostages. So Rachel tried to earn time until the police officers will save her and her husband, and their son was one of the police officers. So Rachel, I felt like Rachel was connected with her inner special quality as being hostess, because that's what Rachel did. She was selling snacks to soldiers in the Tselim army base. So she tried to sing to the soldiers and she tried to chat with them and she told them, oh, maybe you will eat some cookies and you need to rest. Oh, you got injured, sweetie, please lay down. So she tried to earn time, and that's what helped her and her husband that's what helped all the whole rescue mission. This is an amazing story.
It is an amazing story. I know a lot of the news picked up on it, and it came around in social media, and you tell it beautifully in the book as well. So this goes to the question you shared, that there was a certain way to approach these stories and the reality with your children. So maybe I can ask you that question now. I was going to save it for a little after. How do you, or did you in this book, and in general, how do you balance the need for being age appropriate with the material, as well as telling the stories about what really happened on October 7th?
That's a good question, because my inner conflict as a writer was, that every good story have a beginning, middle, and end with a plot. And I felt that the Israeli mother in me can't build the tension to the climax, because I wanted to protect my children and all the children in the state of Israel. But I asked myself, they know. They know what Paro did to the Jewish babies in Egypt, and they know what Haman wanted to do in the Megillat Esther. And some of them already know stories from the Holocaust. My children know that my grandmother jumped from the train through Treblinka. Okay, like we're telling these stories all the time. On the other hand, all of this happened in distant history and it doesn't threaten us today. So I knew everything needs to be really, really sensitive. So before I wrote the first story, I called a senior child psychologist that specialized in child trauma from one of the best hospitals in Israel. And I've asked her to give me red lines. What can I say and what I can't? At the beginning, she told me, please don't tell anything. This is the second week into the war, and our clinics are full with patients. If you will tell these stories, they can be very traumatic. Then the children can be very frightened. But I told her, they already know, they can hear, they see their fathers going into the army, and they know what happened to their neighbors. And maybe I will write these stories, and parents that want to tell these stories will do that now. And maybe others can tell it in, I don't know, half a year ahead when the war will stop. That's what I thought. So she told me, okay, I will tell you. This is so important, first of all, to pick the story to your child through his development. In Israel, the stories are suitable for 9 to 12 years old. And I think that abroad, it's something like 11 and over, because they're less exposed to the harsh reality. And this is what this was in the beginning. I think that now 7 and over, it's okay. And she told me not only, picking the story is important, but the discussion that you can have after you're reading the story. Okay, ask them what they feel about the events and the heroes described. Also, she said, validate their feeling. Tell them that it's okay to feel sad, and this is absolutely normal. When I'm reading them stories from the book, I'm telling them, I'm so sad. I really wanted this soldier to stay alive, so they can feel this is okay. Also, she told me, um, tell them, highlight how lives in Israel are carried on. Like the coffee shops are full, there is no parking in the mall, we keep dancing in weddings. Okay, we have also good things in here. Not the whole country is not like battlefield. And I think that the most important thing is to remain in contact while telling them about traumatic situations. Give them a hug, look in their eyes, give them a hug.
As a child and family psychotherapist, these tips resonate with me. And I think it's so important for people to understand that, because we talk about social stories in my line of work, and essentially what it is, it's to build a story in order for you to have this conversation. And that's the starting point of what comes next. And I feel like just reading these stories really helps cultivate that conversation, which is wonderful. And the conversation is not just a one-time conversation, like you're saying. It's just building upon this for future conversations, but also to build that resilience. And you talked about making heroes, right? So it sounds like just these stories. And unfortunately, as much as we talk about Jewish past, whether we're talking about ancient history or just modern Jewish history, these very much resonate with the story of the Jewish people throughout our history, for better and worse. So I think it also has that connection to the stories that we do tell our children, like you said.
I think that what make me feel the passion to write these stories, although this is so complicated, is that I want my children to have cultural heroes beyond Spider-Man and Captain America. And I mean real people that we can connect and learn from. And this is our heroes. One evening, I went with my children to, I don't know, it was a Hanukkah party. And then one of my children said, "Oh, look, Asaf Hamami." And I said, where is one of our great commanders that died on October 7th? And I told him, where? And then I saw a sticker with one of the sentences about Asaf Hamami. I think it was, be good, be Asaf. And I felt my heart was full with, I felt like this is exactly the thing that I wanted them to learn, to have cultural heroes, be good, be Asaf.
Yeah, that's beautifully said. And I'm assuming your intended audience to begin with was Israeli children, and
Yes.
then broadening to Jews in the diaspora and maybe just the general population. So, how is the storytelling, like you said, it might be for a younger audience in Israel and maybe 11 and older in the States or elsewhere. So, how is the storytelling different for example, having this book translated? What was that like for an audience outside of Israel? Because it resonates differently with Jews outside of Israel. I speak from experience, than it does, I assume, for Israelis who are still experiencing this every single day. Obviously, we are as well, but in a different way.
First of all, we started to translate these stories. I think it was in Hanukkah last year, and people overseas told me, we can't light our candles this Hanukkah out of our houses, and we need to take down our mezuzah from the doors. And I felt like I want children all over the world, Jewish children, we know that there is a little country where you can feel, be full with pride, like with proud. We have soldiers, we have a country, we know what we're doing, and you have a place, you have a home, like our heart are connected, and there is a strong rope that connects us. So our English team, and I saw here Alison Kopiatsky from our English team, they started to translate these stories. And before we published this book overseas in the English version, I've told the publisher, listen, I know that I worked with a psychologist here in Israel about this book, but I want you to take a special psychologist from New Jersey because I want her to do the cultural match. I want it like, I know that everything needs to be really sensitive. So they did a great job, I think.
And how does it different? How does it differ from the translation in Hebrew or in Israel? Is there a difference that we
Yes,
would say?
they did a gentle job to try to, not to bring all the passion from the battlefield, but also here in Israel, we did it really softly, like soft heroism. We have stories about hard heroism, like stories from the battlefield, and soft heroism, like one of the women that opened her B&Bs and hosted soldiers, and they could to take a shower at her house and to eat and rest and everything. I think they did a really gentle job. Most of the stories are more like here in Israel, and they had a really tough job by translating the army phrases. Like here in Israel, we all know about the commanders and teams and squads, and overseas, like they need to explain it.
And you started this, I guess it started like a small project and just became viral and expanded, which is beautiful. Yehudit started by sharing a little bit how you started the program and project and you began, but how else did more people become involved? How you got all of these stories of these heroes? How did that come about? And specifically, how did you and Hanna connect?
Oh, okay.
Calls
It
me.
happened from day one. At Hanna, I met her afterwards. But since a day after I had this idea to write these stories, my mind was exploding, and I knew I have to write it down. And at that time in Israel, everybody wanted to help, to do something in this war. So I must tell you this story because I hosted a Qigong therapeutic breathing workshop to women whose husband has been drafted into the reserves. So I saw a sea of women coming into my living room, 30 women, and my friend came to visit me because I was after birth. And I've told her, Shira, I honestly I don't have any patience for it, but I think I need to write stories from this war for children. And then she told me, oh my God, I have my best friend is a graphic designer, and I know someone who can do the social work on the media and Facebook and Instagram. And I didn't have Facebook and Instagram. And I told her, Shira, I expected you to be a good friend and tell me, please go to sleep. You have 7 children, you need to rest, you have to birth. But she told me, no, we will do this together. So we started as a team of 4 women whose husband has been drafted into the reserves. And then I started to call everybody I know who knows how to write well. So I had writers and editors and translators and a psychologist, and we all worked together. And I did the edition work. And then I met Hannah because in the beginning, we started to pick the stories from the media. And at the same time, everybody were in shock. And they went to the funerals and to the hospitals. So what we left is to find the stories in the media and write it down. But then people started to find us widows and families. They asked, please find Hadassa Ben-Ari and tell her and her team to write our story, my husband's story, my son's story. And then we met Hanna, and she asked us to write Uriel's story, her amazing Uriel. And we did an interview and we wrote the story and we published it. And this story is not in the first book, but I really hope that we have the second volume and the third and the fourth because we wrote 200 stories.
So you answered one of my questions,
I
which was
know.
how many stories did you collect, and what was the selection process like for what stayed in the book, what didn't, and will there be another volume? So 200 stories so far, potentially another volume or two, God willing. Amazing. And what was the experience like getting this book published?
How it was for me?
Yeah.
Wow, it was amazing. I was in shock. I felt like this is a good net project, but one day the publisher in Israel, Yediot Achronot, called me and they told me, we want to publish your stories. And I told them, okay, wait, because we have been through 3 or 4 months into this war. So let's wait. I could write these stories more emotional, in a more emotional way and in a good way, like a good story with a beginning, middle, and end, with a plot, with the tension to the climax. And they told me, no, we want to publish it now, in April, March. So I told them, okay, let's jump together into the swimming pool. Let's do that together. And I felt like I need to put myself in the side because we have a bigger story over here. And telling these stories is a way to process the trauma. And this is a good way. Tomorrow, I'm going to do a lecture in 2 high schools in Sderot, near the Gaza envelope. And I've told the teacher over there that invited me, what can I say? I mean, there, I will talk with the heroes. There are the heroes. I want to listen to their story. I don't want to talk about how I wrote stories about heroes. They are the heroes. They saw their neighbors getting shot, and this is so hard. And she told me, I must say that everybody here bought this book and they're reading this book. Reading these stories is a way to process the trauma and to organize the whole information. I think that when they're reading these stories, they can say, okay, we are also heroes.
I think that's 100% true. It helps us, like you says, it organizes it for us. It helps us recognize what it means to be a hero. As you said, we have the Spider-Mans and the Supermans, but we have our own heroes here. And for example, how you mentioned the heroes of October 7th, it reminds me of the resistance during the Holocaust. When we talk about resistance, a lot of people think about the partisans and the fighters. However, there were people who sabotaged the factories, who were forced laborers, or people who continued their Judaic practices. So I think what it means to be a hero looks many different ways. And again, just having this conversation and using this book as a starting point allows people to recognize themselves and what they're doing and how they are heroes as well. So it's quite beautiful. The book is beautifully illustrated, and each story is about one page, right? Can you talk
Okay,
about the
yes.
illustration? Yeah,
Less
can you talk
than
about
300 words.
less than 300 words? So can you talk about paring the stories down to about 300 words and the beautiful illustrations that go along with the book?
Sorry, what's the question?
You could talk a little bit about the process of paring it down to 300 words, because there's a
Yes,
lot more to everyone's
and I will
story,
show.
and also the beautiful illustrations that go along with them.
Yes. So Teila, our great graphic designer, did the whole graphics during her job and when her husband is um, in the army. And we wanted to do the stories really short so the children could listen, because in these days no one can read or listen. So we wanted to do that real shortly. And I told my writers, please don't tell me stories only from the battlefield. I want to hear about how they were heroes when they were young, when they were children or teenagers. So I told them, take one special quality. I want a child to hear the story, and then he will be able to find a way to be connected with his inner hero. And I feel that all of the heroes in these stories they have the special way to listen to their inner voice. And when you are listening to your inner voice, you just know what you need to do. If you need to run away, this is also heroism, when you know when you need to run away, or when you need to save one person or 100 persons or people or 7,000, like Rami Davidian did. So I told them, let's pick one story. Some of them wanted to write stories about miracles. And I told them, please leave it to someone else, to another book about stories about miracles. Because when our children are hearing a story about a miracle, they don't have the ability to learn something about it, about themselves. But when we are telling one story about an action, something that the hero did, they can ask themselves, how would I reacted if I were there in the battlefield or in my home or in my safe room?
In the book, the first few pages, you have some guidelines on how parents or grown-ups can read these stories with children. And you're talking about bringing into the classroom. I know with Holocaust education and even my experience in a Hebrew school teaching modern Jewish history and talking about October 7th to 5th and 6th graders and 7th graders, not a lot of teachers have guidance on how to approach the topics, especially October 7th, like you said, it's current. Do you also have a curriculum guide or something available for teachers or schools to utilize in order to be able to help them tell these stories through this book?
Actually, we did a cooperation with schools overseas, and we put it on our website. Our team of volunteers put the stories in English, French, and Hebrew in our website. That's giborimkids.com. So you can find over there all of the stories, not the only ones that's in the book. And yes, thank you, Judy. This is our website. And yes, there is a guidance for teachers over there.
Amazing. I'll also share that in our follow-up email.
Thank you.
Great resources. So you're working with the organization Brothers for Life, Achim
Yes.
L'Chaim. A portion of the proceeds from the purchase of the book will be donated to this organization. Can you tell us how you got connected with them and a little bit more about the organization?
Yes, actually, they didn't know that I'm going to to give my profits to them. Because when I've talked with the publisher about our agreement and the fee and everything, I told them I don't want to earn money about our heroes. Like, I drafted into the reserve like everybody else. This is my way to be part of this war. And I want to bring the money to soldiers who fought for us. And Brothers for Life are helping these soldiers. They have great center near the airport in Israel, and soldiers are coming over there, soldiers that got wounded and soldiers that are post-traumatic, and they have a gym and a pool and psychotherapists that helping them every day. They're doing an amazing job, really. So my profits going to the soldiers. And I've told them about it, and they were really happy. And actually, a day after we did the book launch in Israel, Brothers for Life told me, listen, we need to publish this book in English. So the day after, I called the publisher and I told them, please let me publish this book in the English version. And I've started to learn English because I didn't speak English by the last 15 years. I was raising my children, each baby until he was 2, and then came the other one. So I started to learn English, and we translated the stories, and we published it overseas. And Hanna and I are coming to the US in the end of the month. And Judy did the whole tour for us, so we can speak with the youth and communities overseas.
Amazing. That's probably going to be a very meaningful tour for everyone who's involved in that. So thank you for doing that, both of you. What were some of the challenges of this project, and specifically getting the book out there. So what were the challenges that you came across?
Hmm. From where to start? First of all, writing the stories, and we talked about it, how you can write about a dramatic situation. The second thing was to translate the stories in a way. We had a great fear that parents won't buy this book and don't want to, so they won't want to tell their children these stories. But Judy told me that she spoke with schools and everybody knows this book and they're waiting for us, and it's so excited for us, really. And I think that our main problem is how to get familiar with this book overseas, because the publisher in Israel is he don't know how to work overseas, I must say. And we want everybody to know about this book. Like they're doing a lot of books. So that's the reason that we're coming to the US to explain, to expose the population to our book.
Beautiful. I look forward to it being in everyone's hands in the States. I'll do my part to make sure that happens as well. And I think the beauty of this is not only do we have a book that celebrates the life and honors the memory of these heroes, but also it gives us a way to speak about these stories with children, transmit the stories to the next generation, but also supports an amazing organization as well. So thank you for allowing that to happen. Hanna, I'd love to bring you into the conversation. I would love to ask you, how do you want us to remember Uriel?
Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Hanna Cohen, 32 years old, and the wife of the incredible Uriel Cohen, who was killed in Gaza 2 months after the war started. I'm a mom to two sweet girls, 3 years old Shir and 1.5 years old Leah, and we live next to Jerusalem at Hadassa. So Uriel and I were in opposite places. I did everything I could to stop him from going, and he did everything he could to stay in Gaza and keep fighting. That's what makes me angry, but it also very consoles me. I know that in the second before he died, he was exactly where he wanted to be, leading, commanding, incredibly proud that he was fulfilling his destiny, defending the Jewish nation and the Jewish homeland. So my role right now is to be a person who is lacking someone in this world, and you have an opportunity to be filled for my lack. Uriel was a very amazing person, and I hope that we can all learn from his best midot. He was dedicated to the country, to his people. And our future will be better because of each one of you who tries to live a great, dedicated life.
Thank you. Hanna, I also want to ask you one more question about the support you get from your community and other young widows in Israel. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, so currently there are about 400 widows from the recent war. I have a group of amazing friends who share this situation with me. We have WhatsApp groups and tell bad jokes with dark humor. It was keep us going. I invented the expression bereavement and booze because a little wine always helps. And sometimes we sit together and drink a bit to make things easier. I realize now that it is so important to have family and friends. It's so important to have a support system of people who understand you, what you're going through.
Beautiful. And I do want to share, somebody who did not know I was hosting this program shared a video, and it happened to have you, Hanna, in it. And it was an inspirational video. So I think it's beautiful. So I just wanted to share that. Yeah. Now I want to take this time to open up the program for Q&A from everyone who's with us today. I have a few people who already shared questions with me. I'll start with those, but if anybody else has any questions or comments that they want to share, again, the program is always so meaningful, but with you sharing as well, it makes this even more meaningful. So feel free to raise your virtual hand with the hand raise